Well, hello. Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Rob Van Spyk is an English-born singer, guitarist, and songwriter known for his work with psych folk band Stonefield Tramp. His longtime association with fellow musician Terry Friend led to a fruitful trio of albums during the early 1970s. The first release in 1971 was an acetate promo entitled Going Nowhere, credited to Rob Van Spyk and Terry Friend. The album would be re-released in 2016 on both vinyl and CD. In 1974 came a couple of albums. First, Follow the Sun, credited to R.J. Van Spyk and Friends. 5 months later, Dreaming Again, the first under the moniker Stonefield Tramp. Rob relocated to the U.S. in 1976. In 1977, Terry would release his first solo album, Come the Day. Years later, there would be a Stonefield Tramp reunion and an album aptly titled Full Circle in 2009. Terry would go on to release a couple of more albums in 2017 and 2018. Well, welcome, Rob.
Hi, Greg. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining me today. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in London, within the sound of the Bow Bells, so I'm a Cockney. And I was raised in a little town, the first garden city town of Letchworth, which was actually founded by an American lady for some reason. And there I lived until I was 12. After that, I moved to Devon, which is in the southwest of England, when my parents divorced, and where we sort of settled with my mother. When I was 14, I joined the military as a boy soldier, and that's where I met Terry.
Okay, in the Army.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, he was a boy soldier also, and we spent 3 years as boy soldiers, and then we went straight into man service.
Well, do you come from a musical family at all? Either parent?
My mother played piano, but not as an expert. But she just enjoyed playing piano from her childhood days. Within the family, I actually have on the first album, the Acetate, was Going Nowhere originally. My cousin, who was 12 at that time, and he played recorder on that particular album and added actually all the musical benefit to it. He went on to be quite a famous musician in classical music, and with a Medici quartet, I think it was. The Medici quartet, and he toured the world everywhere. I mean, the music has been very good to him, and he now lives in Texas and is a resident professor at somewhere in Dallas. I can't remember the name of the university, unfortunately.
Is that right? Okay, close to me.
And he lives there now.
All right. Well, we'll have to get contact information if that's okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Show and surprise. Well, can you remember one of the first singles or 45s or albums that you got when you were younger?
Oh, you mean before anything else?
Yeah,
I actually did not have any record collection when I was young. I just listened to radio, and so you're asking who my favorite artists were in that way. So probably Bob Dylan was actually my first favorite artist.
All right.
And I liked the Beatles when they came out, but I actually preferred the Rolling Stones, a little bit rougher around the edges.
A little bit rougher. Any radio shows that you would listen to over there?
Probably the Archers, which was a very famous country life one, all about a farming community somewhere in England. That went on for years and years and years.
Oh, okay. I've heard that before.
But I have to be honest with you, at that age, before I joined the military, I spent most of my time playing with my friends outside, because in those days, that's what you did.
That's what you did, and everyone left their doors open, and
That's exactly right. Yeah, and if you got in trouble with the cop, he got a hold of your ear and took you home and said, "Your boy's been a bad boy. Now keep him home." You know, those are
yeah,
the good old days, I guess.
it was a better time. Yeah, I'm sure you have fond memories of that.
I
Well,
do.
at what age did you start playing guitar?
That quite late in life. When I met Terry in the military, there was three of us. There was one guitar, and we all banged around on it. Probably we wrote a first song there, and I mean, just for fun of it. But there was nothing serious. But years later, I wanted to leave the military because promotion was so slow. You have to wait for the people above you to sort of pop off, you know.
Oh, until you
And so, and I was 21, 22, early 22. I decided I would leave the military. And at that time, you had to break your contract. So you had to purchase the contract back so you could leave, because I'd originally signed up for 9 years. So, you know, soldiers spend a lot of money on beer and having fun on the off times. So I decided, well, I've got to stay in. So I bought a guitar and taught myself in the laundry room, much to people's annoyance.
Right. That's funny. Well, during this time, Terry was writing a lot of poetry, and
Yeah, he was originally quite interested in just writing poetry. And then I think at one stage, this is after we had graduated from the military school, as it were, and Terry was stationed, well, we just separated as friends. He was in the Royal Artillery and I was in the Devon Dorset Infantry Regiment. So we went off to our regiments and then we sort of lost contact for a little while. And then in I guess, well, anyway, Terry contacted me again quite late. We always kept in contact, but very loosely. He sent me some lyrics and said, asked me if I was still playing guitar. And I said, oh, yeah. And he said, well, you know, do you want to put some music to a couple of these? And he was, I think, in Singapore at the time.
Oh,
and I was actually, had left the army already. And I said, yeah, sure. And anyway, so we started from there. And I put, I think, music to 5 of his poems and butchered them a little bit, so they became lyrics more than poems. And we went on from then. He purchased his discharge from the military, and he came back to England and moved into a little town called Tewkesbury, which actually figures quite heavily into our music. And and then married a very young wife from Ireland, because he was quite involved in the Irish troubles in the late 60s. I did 2 tours there, and he did 3 tours there, and yeah. Well, a lot of his lyrics and our songs actually are based around that time, because it was a pretty sad time for everybody concerned.
Yeah. Well, that would be interesting to talk to him about that. Unfortunately, he's not here, but do you have any recollections of the trouble yourself?
Yeah, actually, for my stay in Belfast, it was quite pleasant. You know, it was the first time I had a big date with a girl, and you know, they always wanted to marry the soldiers so they could move to the mainland.
Yeah.
And so I had quite an easy time, but Terry not so much, and I think he went through some of the trouble.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
They reflected in lots of his lyrics, of course. There's one particular song called "The 38 Graves,"
yeah,
which is on the Black album, I think it is, Rob band Spyk and Friends.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much to do with the loss of 38 graves with 38 soldiers who had died in trouble up to that point. Right. And he based that song on that event.
Yes, I can going back and listening to that, I can hear that now. Yes, very much. Well, your first work together was the demo recording, Going Nowhere, recorded as an acetate in 1971.
Now, I can talk a little bit about that for interest's sake, if you like. Okay, well,
Where did the title first? Tell me where the title came from.
I guess we just thought, well, we'll try something, and then if we don't succeed, we just say, "We're going nowhere." So that's what we came up with.
Okay.
It's very simple. We
Okay.
rented a little studio. I think it's called True Sound.
Okay.
And we spent, I think, £16 at that time for 4 hours or something like that. So it's a very rough album, and it was meant to be. We just did it to get the acetate so we could hawk it to the publishers and the record companies.
Okay.
So it was very amateurish, but it was enjoying doing. And actually, only 4 copies were made. I had 1 copy still.
Uh-huh.
Terry, I think, gave his copy to a friend, and the other 2 are out and about somewhere. Oh. So my girlfriend, who was on I don't know if you've listened to the album. Yeah. The first one is a poem, and she has the very lovely voice reading that poem. And that was yeah. And she got a copy, and Eva Young got a copy. That's my cousin. Oh, okay. But they've sort of gone out from that, and Terry and discovered that there were lots of copies going around of it, and he thought, well, that's a bit silly going around like that. This is years later, okay? So he said, perhaps we should consider redoing it. So I think 2000, it's the last one we released. So it was 2007, 2006 or something like that. We released the acetate. And we're just limited. We always do very limited releases.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I have listened to it, and I had a few comments also. I want to get your take.
Sure.
Probably or background story, inspiration, that kind of thing. I like the addition of the recorder, especially on the Doing Things Naturally, that track. In the version on Dreaming Again is my favorite on that album.
That's interesting. That is the most played song of all our catalog.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I read the stats from the streaming stations, and I mean, some people must play it all day long, because sometimes it comes in, it's been listened in one place for 30 times. And wow. I know lots of Koreans like it. For some reason, the Asians like our music. I don't know why, but I have quite close contacts now through
the Korean. Isn't that something? Yeah. Where your music carries and who it reaches and who is in really enjoys it. I find that Asians and Japanese too, in particular, really enjoy the Western music. It's really, you never know when you make it who it's gonna really gonna eat it up or enjoy that music. Wow. Well, another track, Peppermint Cream and Gooseberry Pie. I really like the melody on that track.
I'm trying to remember the music on it, and I can't offhand because I don't listen to it so often. But yeah, that's quite. I wish I could bring the lyrics up, but I can't, unfortunately.
I noticed the peppermint was misspelled, maybe on purpose. It just got the one P, Peppermint, instead of the Pepp, 2 P's.
On the album cover, you mean?
On that song, Peppermint Cream and Gooseberry Pie.
Oh, how interesting! That's probably Terry. I'm going to point that out to him.
Okay. I thought maybe
because I've never noticed it.
Maybe he did that on purpose. I don't.
No, I doubt it.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's funny. And I think my next track is my favorite on this album, on the acetate, is Bitter World. I think that's my favorite.
Bitter World is the second most played song everywhere. Now, that song actually is on the Black album also. No, on Dreaming Again also. And there it becomes a 9-minute jam, really. I enjoyed singing that song so much. The initial version is a lot more cutting, I think.
Yeah. but I do like it on the Dreaming Again version. Better for me to die than to take my brother's life. I love those lyrics. Yeah, well said. Uh, and then when I was young, I wish it was longer. Wish it was a longer version.
Well, the tale behind that is that we had something like, I don't know, 4 minutes or something left that we could get on the acetate. Oh. And so we wrote that song right on the spot and did it within that 4-hour period. So okay. it was totally ad-libbed and put out.
It was limited to the space that you had.
That's exactly right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then one last track I wanted to mention, Country Divided. I enjoy that one.
That's about Ireland.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now that you put that subject on there, I can see that. I can hear that. Well, how at the time, well, never mind. I was going to say, what was the public's response? There wasn't, because there's only 4 copies made. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Did you go around to any publishers?
We went everywhere we could to go, and at that time, folk really wasn't very popular. Yeah. So we didn't meet any success. I think that the only time we had a tad of success commercially was later on. I'll put that later. Okay. But with the acetate, we had very little luck.
All right. Well, Terry got married in '73, and he and his wife rented a farm cottage. Here comes Correct. The couple.
Yeah, that's a picture on the side.
Yes. So go ahead and talk about what part the cottage would play in future music plans.
Okay. Terry joined me in Letchworth, Hertfordshire, and we lived together. We shared an apartment there for a while, where we did a lot of creative stuff. And then Terry went off to Ireland. He got married, and he came back. And then him and his bride, they moved into a little country cottage next door to his parents. It was like a duplex, we'd call it here. Yeah. And that's where Terry set up with his wife. And Terry started working in a plastic molding factory. And he met Brian, who is really the third part and a very important part to our music. Brian was a great musician. He spent a couple of years busking. He's younger than we are, but he spent a couple of years busking in London, and he did lots of music over in Germany for a certain nightclubs and stuff over there. He's a very gifted musician, and he's actually a multi-instrument on string instruments.
Is that right?
Yeah, and you can hear that through our songs, because we play, I think, a lute at one stage and then a banjo and stuff like that. He does that, and he just brings it along and plays it. So he has brought lots of musical sparkle to our melodies.
Right.
So the three of us then, we decide, okay, let's make an album. And that was the Black Album. So we started meeting. Now that was about a 3-hour drive for me from London.
Okay.
And they, of course, lived there. So I'd go and spend the weekend, and Cherry's bride would cook for us, and we would just be left alone to our own devices. It involved a lot of drinking beer and playing and getting to know each other initially, and then sort of playing with the music and enhancing it some with Brian. And then after that went on probably 3 or 4 months. And then we said, okay, well, let's go to a studio. And Terry, we found a studio in a little town in Oxfordshire, I think it is, called Stonefield, is the name of the village. And the studio was just a very small place in a very lovely village. The studio is still there. I've been back to visit it many, many years later, but it's changed hands quite a few times. And we rented it for a day.
Okay.
And so that cost, I think, £32 at that time. So anyway, we rehearsed like anything, and then we showed up and did it. And of course, we were all very nervous. So there are blunders on the album. You know, it's not one of these thousands of dollars deals. It put together for $32.
Right. Right.
So we showed up there and just played our music, changed a few things, and we were very fortunate. The guy who owned the studio, he was a guy that developed the auto deck for recording.
Oh, really? Okay.
Colin Sanders, quite famous.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so he sort of played with our recording and stuff like this. As an engineer, he taught us a lot, but it's a very short session. And he added things like, I think one song, I can't remember what he added, but it sort of goes up and down. The song is called Mothers Don't Tell Your Children, I think.
Okay.
And he sort of phased it, called phasing. Up to that point, I've never even heard of phasing music. Anyway, it's quite interesting to record it. And after we finished, we left and we ordered 200 copies from him. We were naive about the music business at that stage. Colin not produced it, but he ordered the thing, and we did the cover and stuff like this, and it was actually released on the Econ label, which was his label.
Oh.
That was our mistake. We shouldn't have done it that way. And I'll tell you for why. Because we only produced 200 albums.
Mm-hmm.
We went down to that studio again later to do, I can't remember the year, to do Dreaming Again.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry went through the Wandering in the studio. He looked in the other room, and the gap had not been that big, and he found a host more copies of the Black Hole.
Oh.
And so we were a little worried that this was still being released out there and sold, you know, because if you own the record label and you do the recording, it becomes your profit.
Yeah, that's right.
He didn't screw us. He didn't feel screwed us, you know. It's there were more albums actually made than the 200 that we would have normally built. Anyway, Roger, he was an interesting guy, and unfortunately, very young age, he died in a helicopter crash, and the studio passed on to other people. But I actually visited here back in 2007. I think I went back and tried to what happened to the studio, and it was still there. It was still booking people in a little teeny cottage.
It was still there. Well, you know, you could chalk up a lot of that to, you know, innocence. You know, like you said, it was your first time, you know, in a recording studio and dealing with all that. You couldn't have known all the things of the business side of it. You know,
we were absolutely naive in that part of it. You know, just totally amateurs enjoying ourselves, really.
Right.
So after we took that album, do you have questions about that album? That's actually a lot of people's favorite album.
It is. It's my favorite as well. Who designed the logo? Talk a little bit about that. I like that.
Okay.
The three.
I had a friend called CPO. That's Charles Osmond is his real name, but he was an accountant for the city of Letchworth, as it was. A young guy. He's younger than I was. He moved into the apartment below us in the house we had, and I met him. We got on, and he was very good at art. And so we asked him to design the cover, and that's what he came up with. And so the three people on the front of the page, that actually became our logo.
Yes.
Which you'll see all over the place now because it's sort of stuck.
Yes. I like that. I like the shading on it. I like the position.
He did everything for it. He did all the writing. It's very amateurish to do it, but we just did it all ourselves. We didn't actually pay a high type artist to do it. You know, he wrote the cover notes and everything. Right.
It was very effective, I think. Well, yeah, like you mentioned, that it is my favorite. You know, you said it's a lot of fans' favorites. The guitar is great on all tracks. I have to say that. Lady Death. These are my favorites. I'll just mention
Mhm.
sitting, singing songs in the sun. Try saying that 10 times fast.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Machine Blues, Soldier Song, Today's News, and then the one that you mentioned earlier, 38 Graves, and Follow the Sun. Almost the whole album.
Yeah.
And then I like the mandolin in the beginning of Terry's Come the Day. I almost expected to hear Maggie May,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
went out. But yeah, so it's almost every song on that album, really, really. You guys were, beginning to mature, you could tell on this album.
Yeah, that we had a lot of fun doing it, and the preamble up to it. Unfortunately, again, budgetary. It was a very small budget. We're both factory workers, so it was a lot of effort. And the traveling back and forth, rehearsing, sort of ate a lot of money for us. And so financing was a bit of a problem, but we did it, and we managed to come out with some plastic, and that's become quite a collector's item also, as well as Dreaming Again. And I think I've seen it go for $300-400 for a copy.
Yeah, you'll find a lot of the people, years later, bin diggers, people that are looking for those obscured vinyl albums, they'll.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I've actually bought a couple at exorbitant prices, so I have them again to sell in the future, because the collector's things go up in price.
Right.
So I have them sitting in my drawer for my kids.
There you go. To pass on. Yeah, it's the rarity a lot of times. Just that label of rarity will just fetch top dollar, a lot of times. And the word gets around the internet, and it has. 5 months later, right, Dreaming Again, also from 1974. This one the first album credited to Stonefield Tramp.
Yeah, let me go through that a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. After we finished the Black Album, I referred to the Black Album. Okay, that's Rob Van Spyk. Now, the Rob Van Spyk name came with my name and a play on Terry's name.
Right.
Okay, you understand it's Terry Friends, so Rob Van Spyk and Friends. Okay, there's a bit of play on his word, on his name. So after we finished that, and we were actually sold quite a few straight away. I mean, right afterwards, because at that time we were actually performing on just me, which is not very nice. I never enjoyed doing it myself. I always got very screwed up and very nervous. So Terry now stayed down in Tewkesbury, obviously, and I decided that I would form a band so I could carry this music on. And I put an ad in the local paper, and I had these young boys come and offer their services. Now, I had some very good musicians come and offer their services, but I didn't want that. I wanted people that I could do what I wanted to do. Okay. In fact, a famous guy came there, and he wasn't famous at the time. He was an extremely good guitarist, and he ended up playing for Bill Wyman's band in much later years for quite a long period of time. I just can't remember his name. Tell me, maybe, but I can't quite think.
I can look. Well, go ahead.
But anyway, he actually said, "Well, why you pick these other guys? They're not so good." And I said, "Because I can control them better." I mean, it was an obvious thing, and that was a guy called Dave Lloyd and Chris Taurus.
Yes.
Okay, and we rehearsed. My father owned a factory in Letchworth, and he let us use the warehousing part back for rehearsing. So we'd rehearse there 6 times a week. So it became more like a job.
Okay.
And these boys put their hearts into it. They really did. I mean, they worked hard. And anyway, we put this list together. Obviously, Terry's moved to Letchworth now. With his wife left it, unfortunately.
Okay.
for some other guy. Anyway, so he moved up to Letchworth and got a cottage up there, and he managed the band, got us gigs and stuff like this, got us more recognition locally. You know, we were quite well known locally at that time. And then we decided, well, we'll make another album. So I think we rented the studio. Oh, Black Album was not a full day; it was half a day. We decided on the next album that we would put the songs down. Brian would be involved, I'd be involved, and the two boys would be involved. We didn't have drummers at that time. And so we booked the studio again at Stonefield, put down the tracks. Once again, there are still blurbs on the album because time constraint. We couldn't go back. For instance, on Bitter World, the bass is out of tune. Oh. And we all knew it right after we did it.
Yeah.
You know, and the bass player was really, excuse my language, pissed. Yeah. You know, he was very upset. He was upset. And he was a young kid, so I don't blame him. And sure. Yeah, but why didn't we tell him? Well, we didn't notice at the time. We just carried away. Mm-hmm. But we couldn't change it. We couldn't afford to do anything about it. So that's as it stands. That's one of the mistakes. And there are a couple of vocal mistakes on the album. So it's not a perfect thing, but it was a lot better than the Black Album from recording point of view. Okay. Now, after we finished recording, we didn't order any albums from Colin. We left because we didn't even have a band. Okay, so we on the way back from the recording studio, we stopped and we just lay under the sun, look at the sky, all of us, and we started putting names together, and eventually we came up with the name Stonefield Tramp, because Supertramp was one of my favorite bands at that time. Okay, you've heard of Supertramp, of course. You know, they're one of my favorite band. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so then we called ourselves Stonefield Tramp. We went back home and we put the legal things in order to do it, and then we started performing as a band. Now, unfortunately, Brian lived in Tewkesbury, so he actually came and performed with the band about 5 times. We had some college gigs, and he would come along and be part of the band at that stage because he was that type of guy. He didn't need to rehearse, play. And anyway, so we had some good local success, started spreading out like this. We did Watchfield, which was quite a big, not Woodstock, but it was like Woodstock, you know, that sort of atmosphere, and a couple more like that. And so we were doing quite well. And at that time, I met my first wife, and we shared a cottage near Letchworth. And at one stage, after we'd been performing, it got sort of, she was feeling distressed because I was putting a lot of time into music, you know, it sort of demands you. And it didn't stress our marriage so much, but I felt she was an American girl. Okay. And she was 19, so she was quite young. And she was working for Hewlett Packard in London. And then the job finished. I can't remember for what reason. She wasn't fired, it was just the job finished. Hewlett Packard closed down the division or something. It was to do with health. So she had to find another job, and then she wanted to go back to the States. Okay, and I can't give you a time frame for that. But anyway, so I sort of shut down the band at that stage. Okay, so now you can go back to that album. Okay, we can cover the album itself.
Okay. Yes. Let me ask you, what had Chris Satoris and Dave Lloyd done previously?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Nothing. Okay. No, they were, I think, still in school.
Okay.
And Chris Satoris, he might have gone on with another band after we left, because actually Stonefield Tramp did go on, but very short time, because they couldn't hold it together on their own. I mean, at that time, was a good friend of mine who sang for them, and he. I'll get to that part later.
Okay.
It's actually quite interesting.
Okay, please do. Yeah, so they were kind of handpicked because there weren't going to be huge egos to deal with.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
And it worked out very well because I can't remember how old I was at that time, but I was much older than them, and I was the boss. That was simple as that. And Terry was the boss of all. And quite honestly, it's a great way to run a band. This all mucking in together in many cases never works, in my opinion.
You're right. A lot of infighting and things like that. Well, as mentioned earlier, my favorite on the album is Doing Things Naturally. And Bitter World, I mentioned that one also. But a couple of others that I like, the title track, Dreaming Again, and the instrumental theme from Follow the Sun. Really nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dreaming Again, I wrote in the factory, actually. And it was sort of, that was actually I wrote the lyrics and the music to that song. And that sort of became lots of people remember that song when we performed it, would say, even years later, they'd say, we still remember that song. That's like the anthem song, it's about struggling through work and dreaming of things you could do.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's something that rings a common chord with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, as you were leading up to you in '76, you moved over.
Yeah, before I left, we managed a band called Change. And they were a great band, a super band. And we spent all our profits recording them.
Oh,
okay, on the Tramp label. And the singer of the band became a very close friend of mine. And we put a big tour together for them. After we'd spent the money recording it, we went to all the colleges all over, making quite a big tour. And we came back, presented it to the band, who were all eager at first, but then they started flaking out, saying, well, I'm going to go to college and be an accountant, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. And so it fell apart, unfortunately, because they were really a gifted band.
They were all young. They were all young.
They were younger than Terry and I, but they weren't that young. No, I mean they were trained. They were college type.
Yeah.
But they didn't like the idea. I think when they actually got put in them, okay, we're going to go to all these colleges and got paid gigs already. We had gigs lined up, and they pulled out, except the singer, he didn't. So he left the band, and as I was leaving, he went to sing for Stonefield Tramp. And I still have the tape somewhere of that band, but we've never done anything with it.
Never. Did you keep in touch or contact with any of the members?
Well, no, not with the members of the band. We didn't, because there was a lot of bad feeling about it, because we'd invested all our profits into promoting them, and they sort of played the dirty on us. Right. I kept up with Mike. He was a singer. He was actually the son of a member of Parliament in England. He married, but when I came to the States, he disappeared. When I was trying to put the band together for the reunion in 2006, 2007, up to 2009, I couldn't find him anywhere. So I don't know what happened to him. We found everybody except for Dave Lloyd, who I found years later, several years later.
All right. Well, you did. I'm sorry. Move to the U.S. in '76.
Yeah.
And you've been here ever since.
Yeah. My wife and we arrived in Oregon, and I got a job as a experienced electrician, which I really wasn't, in a mobile home plant called Brookwood, and I worked there for 4 years, I think. And musically, I didn't do anything. For a long, long time. I was sort of, I didn't have time, didn't feel the inclination to it.
Yeah. But you know as well as I've heard, once you're a musician, you're always a musician. And
Well, I've always played a little bit, but on my own. You know, I really enjoyed the band atmosphere and the camaraderie of it, and I really missed it when I moved to the States. And I sort of did it move for my wife anyway at that time.
right.
So didn't back into it.
Right.
Until 2006, I started putting it together again.
Yeah. Well, in '77, Terry released his first solo album, "Come the Day," credited to Terry and Friends. There's Friends again. And how did that album fare?
I think it's a collector's item again. I've seen it several places for sale, and I think Terry actually sold one a few months ago at quite a good price. Have you ever heard that album?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, okay. I personally didn't like it very much. It's maybe because I associated with the musicians who were on it. You know, I knew quite a lot of them from another band that we had managed and who played out. Okay. But I mean, it's quite a popular album.
Oh, all right.
And since, I mean, if Terry's this list of discs is actually quite long.
Yeah.
And but he made that before he met Brian.
Oh.
Okay, and then Brian was always involved in Stonefield Tramp and Terry's album. And later on, they used the name Stonefield Tramp because that's the most recognized thing. So you'll always see on Terry's records a member of Stonefield Tramp.
Right. Well, you mentioned what was it, circa 2006? What led to that reunion, getting back together?
Oh, let me just go back to one other band that Terry produced on his own, and they're quite successful. They were a punk band of all things, Bleach Boys. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they never toured, I don't think, but they were quite popular in England. And he cut a single with them, which he sold quite a few copies of.
Oh, I saw that on there. That was the single, yeah. Bleach Boys, yeah.
The Bleach Boys, yeah. That was a good success for Terry. I don't know how well he did, but that was on the Tramp label, I think, also.
Oh, okay. It was good that he was able to adjust to that, the DIY punk movement that came in, because it killed a lot of careers for a lot of musicians, once that, but it was good that he was able to adapt to that,
Before the reunion, Terry contacted me. No, I had a letter from out of the blue.
Oh, okay.
And from Gunfeld Records, I think it was called, which they wanted to re-release Dreaming again.
Okay.
And they wanted to do a limited, I think 1,000, maybe 2, but I think 1,000 of CDs and 1,000 albums. And so we gave them the rights to do that. And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe a reunion might be fun. And so quite a big space in that thing. Anyway, those records are sold quite frequently on eBay and Discogs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So even they'll become, I think eventually they'll become collector's items also.
Did you start hearing from fans,
Yeah. Well, we've always had a trickle of people who like the music and was interested in what we're going to do next and stuff like that, off and on. And so as 2006, I thought, well, maybe we could do a reunion. Now, the band had a drummer now. We had a drummer just at the end of the period. And we'd already recorded albums. So I thought it'd be nice to do a reunion. And we tried to trace everybody. We got everybody except the lead guitarist. Well, there wasn't a problem because we had Brian, and Brian was a great lead guitarist, even though he never did it for us.
Yeah.
Okay, and we put the numbers together, and we all met at Stonefield, and I rented a studio for a week. And we live in the studio and write songs. Everybody had to write a song. It wasn't a Terry Me deal. Everyone had to write a song, and so we recorded our album over 2-week sessions, 2006, 2007, and it was ready to go. And then I found financially, suddenly I didn't have the funds to finance it. It was something like $6,000 is what I wanted to do. So I just put it on hold. And that's as far as the recording has gone.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a few comments on tracks on there as well. Eternity has great guitar interplay on that track.
Oh, there's a good story with that song too. Okay, here's the story on that song. Terry was a huge Alamo fan.
Okay.
Huge. He wrote an album called The Alamo. Okay. And in fact, just if I could see it here. This book, can you read it? It's not backwards, is it?
No, it's okay. Right.
The Music of the Alamo.
Uh-huh.
It's all people who have written about the Alamo, okay? And Terry wrote this album about the Alamo. So what's interesting is he's in this book, has done that. Yeah, he's in this book. I'm going to show you the picture. Okay. We get quite involved with the Alamo because we used to always meet down there.
Uh-huh.
And
isn't that something?
We went to parties to the Alamo fans, and Phil Collins came to one of them. You know Phil Collins?
Yeah.
He came to one of them. And we met him there. And anyway, he's a really nice guy. I can't find it here. Anyway, it's got his album cover in here and a little skit about him. This is similar to his picture here, like this one. His picture's in orange. And Phil Collins wrote the foreword to this book, so which is sort of interesting. He's a huge Alamo fan, which we never knew. He spends a lot of money on it, trying to preserve the artifacts.
Is that right? You know what's so interesting? That's the second time the Alamo's come up today. In my previous interview with Pete.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The Spencer Davis guy.
Yeah, isn't that something? I like that. We find those common chords like that.
Eternity. Terry and I said one morning we stayed in a hotel for our week in at the Alamo town, which I can't think of, San Antonio. Yeah. And I said, well, let's why don't we write a song, go record it. This was fun for old time's sake, So we wrote the song, hired a studio for an hour and went and recorded it. And Terry went back with it. And then I think a year later or something, Terry said, okay, well, I've sent you something. He sent me this album, and Brian had recorded on it too, straight over the recording. And slowly we just added things to it, people. And so the song actually turned out really pretty good, for something we wrote in a few minutes.
Only a few minutes, yeah. I love the guitars on that. The dual guitars on that. And then A Song for You is a nice, tight rocker. I like how the vocals are treated in the chorus.
Now, the guy that wrote that is called Spyk Friends, and he was our lead guitarist. Very gifted young guy. Yeah. He's another one of the young guys from Stonefield Tramp early days. Yeah. And he actually owned a studio, did a lot of studio work, but it was like for voiceovers and stuff like that. But he did quite a lot of work for somebody, and I can't think of his other name, but there's an actor called, who is the girl with the big lips, actress, you'll know her name. Jo married Brad Pitt.
Oh.
Yeah, Angela Jolie.
And Angela, yeah.
Well, her dad is John Voight.
Exactly, right.
His brother is a singer, Chip somebody. I can't think of his other name.
Yeah, Chip Taylor.
Chip Taylor, that's it. And he's very popular in England. And he recorded in my friend's studio, Peter Kiley. So that's just another connection there, which is quite interesting.
You know what song he wrote? You remember the big hit?
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Oh, the Probes had a big hit. Yeah.
Wild Thing.
Wild Thing. That's it. That was his huge hit. Yeah.
That's one that just blew my mind. It's like, wow, somebody, John Voight's brother, American wrote that song. Yeah, I couldn't get my head around that one for a while. That was wild. Um, Going on with the some of the other couple of songs on there. Winter King, another nice track. I really
That was
like.
written by Brian.
Mhm.
He wrote that's the only song he's written as a contribution because everybody had to write something, and that song is a wonderful song. And that I'm assuming is about King Arthur, but I'm not certain.
Ah, possibly. I'll have to go
Because
back.
he was called the Winter's King.
Yes, possibly, yeah. And then I think my favorite on the whole album is Luna Bianca.
That's mine.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a story about that. I was married to my childhood sweetheart actually the second time. I divorced my first wife, or we divorced, and I married my childhood sweetheart. She came to America to visit me, and she stayed here. And we lived in J, Georgia. I had a log cabin by the river. Beautiful place. Anyway, probably she only married me to get a green card. I don't know. I hate to say that, but the marriage is quite good. But she got a job teaching in San Benito at a school, a college down there, and developing the virtual school atmosphere. I mean, at that time. So she moved down there, and then I sold the cabin. I moved down there, and that's how I ended up in San Benito, which is one of my favorite places. I don't know if it would be now, but it was at that time. And anyway, she got cancer, and she licked it once, and then she came back again. And I looked after all this time. But anyway, we divorced during this time, and I met my now wife on the internet, and she's from China. So anyway, my wife died, but I had already married the other girl, and brought her back. She lived in San Benito while I helped my second wife get to the hospital. I live with her every day, looking after her. It's quite a traumatic time in my life, because someone you love being eaten away. It's horrible. But my third wife, and she was a brick for it all. She just left me to it, which is always a big gift for me. Yeah. And we have a 15-year-old daughter from that reward. So,
okay.
That's a side. I was telling you about the song, wasn't I? What was the song? No. Anyway, Luna was in between that. My second wife died. I met Luna on the internet. She was from Seattle.
Okay.
And I drove to Seattle to meet her, and we got on like a house of fire. We were friends, and we remained friends for years and years. But I actually fell quite heavily for her, but she didn't for me. So it never worked out. But we made friends for years until we had a falling out, which is a personal thing. So I'm not going to tell you about that. That's pretty much the history of that song. But I like the song too, and that's just me playing that. I think there's a little keyboard on there.
Yeah, it's a very pretty song.
Thank you.
Very pretty. Well, anything that you want to bridge the gap in between that album and when the Acetate was re-released in 2016? Did you want to fill in any of that period?
Well, musically, I don't think much happened. It's Terry found again lots of copies of the Acetate floating around bootlegs, and it sort of upset him a little bit. Yeah. He said, well, maybe we should do the Acetate, but do we have enough? Do we have an Acetate that's usable?
Right.
Well, luckily we did. We had one. And so we recorded that, sent it to the correct places, which were good at restoring stuff, and we made that album up. Now, I don't know if you've heard the album. You might have heard the tracks. If you like an album, I'll send you one. I'm quite happy to.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll send you a copy of it. Yeah.
Okay. So in 2016, released in limited quantities on both CD and vinyl. What has been the fan base response
Quite good.
Yeah.
Actually pretty good. I think we have a few copies left out of the initial pressing, and a quite good response to the actual quality of the recording. I think it was totally made from the original acetate. There was no re-recording or anything done, just mastering.
Right.
So we were quite pleased.
Okay, well, good. How about all along? I forgot to ask you about critics writing write-ups about you. Have they been pretty fair or pretty?
Yeah, I think actually we've got some pretty good critics. We like there's a book called, I don't have it here. It's about this thick. It's called Collector's Albums.
Mm-hmm.
You know, vinyl records, and we're in there as with quite a good write-up. And some of the critics, one of our best supporters actually John Peel.
Yeah.
He was a DJ way back.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he was really the only DJ that ever showed any interest in what we did. We never met him, but he verbally he did.
Yeah.
And that was about it. Lots of people have written very nice things about us. You know, they always say, well, they're a psychedelic folk group.
Yeah.
Well, I never heard of psychedelic folk until after we'd recorded something. So whether we actually created that genre, I have no clue. You know, it seems possible.
Right.
But at one time, we just wanted to be a punk band before punk was even out. So.
Right. You didn't happen, speaking of John Peel, you didn't happen to do a John Peel session?
No, we didn't. We saw some writing where Terry heard something that he had commented on us that we could be quite successful.
Yeah. He was very much a pioneer as far as, you know, the championing a lot of bands, and I mean giving them their start a lot of time by playing.
And absolutely right. He gave. I mean, he played us on the radio. I mean, it's and that's a big kick, a big sign on, you know.
A big push, big promo. Yeah. Anytime he would get behind somebody, and he had great taste. I mean, all the music that he promoted.
Yeah, he had a broad spectrum of genres that he enjoyed, which is the way it should be, I think.
I think so.
And then there's been a couple of other write-ups by people who've written books, and we've been included in the book. We always get this the amateurish feel. Well, we know why, because of the low budget, you know, and or Van Spyk wailing away on Bitter World or stuff like that, but always quite positive, nothing very negative.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I found out about you. I think I mentioned when we talked on the phone, maybe not. Rate Your Music, the website. Are you familiar with Rate Your Music?
I'm sure I've seen it.
It's RYM, or Rate Your Music. Just look up RYM, and that's where I found out about a lot of these obscure, you know, unknown bands. Is you can look under a certain category, certain type of music, what have you, and it's just people that own albums. It's their, you know, rating your own music. So you have an album or whatever, and then you talk about it, you know, rate it. And so you might look on there and then look up.
Yeah, I will. You know. There's actually quite a few collectors who have websites, and they have either interviewed Terry. Terry's generally done that in the past, and I was sort of reticent to do.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you agreed to do this, Rob. It's been enlightening, you know, and I think for a lot of fans too as well. Our new fans, you know, people that may be turned on.
Sure.
Hearing about this, you know, the stories and the background. And I wanted to, go ahead and mention Terry had a couple of other albums more recently. Anno Domini.
Yeah, that's one of his latest ones. Yeah.
2017, and then Lazy River, Anno Domini. Yeah.
Yeah, there's more than that. There's quite a few. He's done quite a lot, but he's never made a killing at it, you know. And whenever I talk to him, I say, well, you know, we need to get all the stuff together and have an auction or something, you know, because otherwise it's going to die. His kids, he has two daughters, all growing up, and they're really not interested in doing anything with it. my son has committed to me that he will take over the standard and keep my site going and keep the streaming going and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but we, I think actually he has quite a lot of plastic that he needs rid of, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
So we're sort of getting away from it. We're getting too old now,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and in today's music world, it's really, really hard to make any money with the streaming.
I know.
Yeah,
streaming has gone away, but vinyl records have come back to a certain extent. I don't know how big it is, but lots of times people do small pressings of it, put them out, and they sell it to the fan base.
Yeah, that's true. So there is some of that going on, but it's a different time, than when you were originally recording. But,
well, you know why? Because you can sit here with your mic.
Yeah.
Show you my mic.
Yeah, you're
quite happily, and you're mixing stuff, and you can just twiddle away and do it.
Yeah.
Like how AI is going to take the film industry.
Oh, right. You're right.
That's what I feel. I just read an article by a guy called Taylor Perry, who lives in Atlanta, I think. Anyway, he had something like an 85 million or 285 million investment building new sound stages, and he just pulled the plug on it this week.
Wow.
Saying he'd been introduced to AI, and now he could get some text messages into the program and have it, and it frightens him.
Yeah,
this threatens all the actors, all the people who do stuff like that. It's quite a scary thought, I think.
It is scary. I think somebody has to intervene in that and limit it or do something, because I don't think just letting it go full blown is not the right thing to do. I don't.
No, I agree with you. You're actually turning over your future culture of art,
right,
to artificial intelligence, and that, to me, that's crazy.
Right, right. And with the what is it called with the a lot of the musicians these days, they all sound the same because they have that voice. What is that called? Where they treat the voice.
Oh, they tune it.
Yeah,
auto tune. Yeah.
I think that's one of the worst things that's ever been.
I'd rather hear a flat note.
Yeah, I would too. So that kind of goes with that too as well. Yeah, there's a lot of good trends and a lot of bad. Yeah, with technology. So, all right. Well, want to mention what you are up to these days and kind of coming to a.
No, I'm enjoying my retirement. My wife still works. My child is now looking for college, and that's how I'll end it, I guess. My time here. If I do anything musically, I'll surely let you know. So we're trying to, I have something, I know 15 guitars or something I want to get rid of, but eBay is such a horribly place now. It used to be good. I used to sell a lot of guitars on eBay, and but now there's so many of them, so much of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of times you have to be right at the cusp or right at the forefront of those sites, and then once it gets all saturated with too many, then it kind of goes down the quality. So it's hard. All right. Well, thank you.
Send me your address, and I'll send you some of whatever I've got available. Okay, just as a gift. And I surely enjoyed it, Greg. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate it too, Rob. And all the best to you, and everything in your life.
No, and I will actually get you. I'll send you an email with all the discs that Terry has done.
Oh, okay.
Because it's actually quite impressive. He's written 2 books, and what he's written his memoirs already years ago. He's a very, very interesting guy. He's quite introverted in many ways, and he's very conservative in his outlook on life. But he's actually quite interesting. I know why he's my best friend, because he's such an interesting fellow.
Okay, all right. Well, you mentioned to him that this was only half as painful as going to the dentist. you know, so.
I will. I'll try and set you up, okay?
All right. All right. Well, thank you again, Rob. And
Okay, Greg.
we will stay in touch, and I will
Absolutely.
send
Take
you a
care.
copy.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
All righty.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.